Welcome to Connecting Communities. I'm your host, Nancy Bacci. With me today is Nency Salamoun, the new Manager of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the City of Somerville. Thank you for coming on, Nency.
Thank you for having me.
It is a great opportunity for people to learn more about the important work that you're doing for the city. To start, I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about your background, education, some previous work experience.
Yeah, sure. For over 10 years, I worked in the nonprofit sector in a variety of different ways. Most recently, I worked for an organization representing survivors of rape and sexual assault. I was an attorney with the organization, and most of my work involved immigration work, so humanitarian type of visas. I've also worked in other nonprofits, working with children who had disabilities, working on SSI cases, and I've also worked in, in the mental health field as well. So that's, my world has always been the public sector, so I'm really excited to be able to continue that, but just in a different way.
And a little bit about your education?
Sure. I graduated from Northeastern University School of Law. I also went to undergrad at UMass Boston, and I also have a graduate certificate from UMass Boston for Women in Politics and Public Policy.
Very interesting background. What initially drew you into the field of law?
I was working in the mental health field always with the idea that I would be a clinical psychologist. I was always drawn to trauma, normalization, that whole area. And I did an undergrad degree in political science and psychology, kind of those two things always, there were, all those separate fields felt to me like they were very connected. And as I was working in that, I realized I wanted to do advocacy, but in a different way. And so I started to look at law school and going into the legal field as a way to do advocacy, but from a different angle. And that was my decision to do that. And that's when I started working on children's disability cases. And I found that, this was something that really aligned with what I wanted to do.
And then, as you said, you work with victims of sexual assault and rape. That must have been very difficult work to manage, being able to provide support to people who are in such a terrible situation, but also to provide a sense of hope.
Yeah, honestly, there was a lot going on for our clients, but the really amazing thing, as somebody who's working with clients, and while their stories could be really hard, I think what I always took away was resiliency. I think that was always really empowering for me, to watch people, because I was able to work with clients for an extended period of time. When you're doing immigration cases, the process is very long. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about our immigration laws, our immigration system. It is a very, very long process for clients. And so I got to work with them over, years. And so I got to see them from their initial point of being traumatized from that traumatic period, that when you have that sense of yourself taken from you when something like this happens, right, their sense of self, their hopelessness, and to see them come on the other side. And every single time, what I was always amazed with, these are folks who didn't come to us, without any previous traumatic background, right? We all are people that come at things with varieties of backgrounds. And so to see them overcome over and over again different types of trauma, that sense of resiliency is, while it was difficult work, it was really also inspiring.
I can see how that would be the case. So what initially excited you about applying for this position? You said, the title is kind of hints at a bit of the work, right? The Manager of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, but it also encompasses AGA Compliance. So what drew you into wanting to do this sort of work?
So I moved to the U.S. when I was 8 years old, and I moved to Somerville. And so that was a really big piece of it for me. Somerville is, in a way, my hometown. It was the place that welcomed me. And so I've always wanted to be more involved with the city. I was on the Human Rights Commission before applying for this position. So when this opened up, I thought, what a really wonderful opportunity to be able to work in the city that welcomed me, to work in a position that maybe would allow the city to grow even further in continuing to have a space that is, equitable, that is diverse, that is representational of the city that we live in. So I thought that was a really good opportunity, and it had different components, which to my personality, that's better. I can get bored very quickly, and so this was a position that was, I don't think, going to allow me to do that. So
I feel I've kept you busy enough that there's been no time for boredom at all yet. Also, as part of your work, you serve as a staff person for the Commission for Persons with Disabilities, as well as the Human Rights Commission. So as you had referenced, you had been a commissioner on the Human Rights Commission. So it kind of cites you in a very unique seat as someone who had participated as a commissioner and now to be the staff person. So tell us a little bit about the work of the Human Rights Commission and then the Somerville Commission for Persons with Disabilities.
So the Human Rights Commission, really, a lot of this is looking at civil rights issues within the city, making sure that we're teaching folks, we're promoting tolerance for diversity, for equity within the city. And so that can encompass many things. And I think that's a really good place for the Human Rights Commission because there's a lot of things in our everyday lives that are coming up that are important to residents. So a lot of what the Commission does is reflect that through community meetings, through forums, and there's police immigrant dialogues that are sponsored. Most recently with the Charlottesville Vigil that the city held, the Human Rights Commission was a part sponsor in that. And so it's really there to meet the needs of residents as they arise, to be there to promote tolerance, promote civil rights within the city. And having been on the commission, for me, I feel like I see a real great, not just need, but there's so much that the commission can do. So it's really exciting for me to now be staff to the Human Rights Commission to really hopefully further that work. The commission themselves, we have there's the work that we do throughout the year with the community forums, but every year we also host the Martin Luther King event. And this year it'll be on January 15th.
And then the Disabilities Commission, talk a little bit about that.
So that is, the commission consists of individuals who have disabilities, perhaps have a family member who has a disability or has a vested interest in working with that community. And so again, we also have different forums, different events. We've got one coming up on October 24th. It's for National Disability Employment Awareness Month. And so this year it's very exciting. We're going to be having a panelist of individuals who work in the field as well as artists for that event. And that's the annual event that the commission actually holds.
So when you think of ways for people to get involved in the city, whether through a board, a commission, civic engagement opportunities, volunteering with our Summer Serve program, what drew you to wanting to get involved in a way such as a commissioner?
I looked at all the different opportunities that were available, and actually, the city is really wonderful in allowing you to go and check out all the different opportunities. I spoke with the head of the commission at the time, and she was in charge of several different commissions, and so I went and actually sat in on several of them and found myself that I was drawn to the Human Rights Commission at that time. And so I would encourage individuals who are interested. We do have vacancies on the Human Rights Commission, and we also have vacancies for the Disabilities Commission. So I would encourage individuals who are interested to contact me and to I'm happy to meet with you, discuss the commission more, and have you sit in on the different meetings, on several meetings, on helping us with our events. That way to get a sense of whether this really works for you, if this is the opportunity you have, because the city itself has so many different opportunities.
And then, as you said, doing this sort of work, you're 2 months into the job now, and, it's a lot of information to gather. There are a lot of relationships to develop and continue to grow. You've met with a number of community stakeholders. What's your thought 60 days into the job?
There's a lot. There's a lot. There's a lot to the work that we see. I think the one thing that I took away with it's not an accident that the city is as wonderful as it is. I think that's really the biggest thing for me as I kept meeting the different individuals who worked for the city. I was taken aback. There's really a lot of wonderful people working for the city who not only care but are also very talented. And so I think that was my biggest takeaway. It's not an accident. I think the city continues to want to grow, and then there are people involved, in the community members, but as well as city officials and individuals who work for the city that are very committed to it. And I think that's been my biggest takeaway. While there's a lot of components to the work that I do, lots of different departments that overlap, working on one particular project, the people who are behind it are very mindful and very caring about the issues.
As you've mentioned several times, Somerville is a very diverse community, very welcoming, and I always love hearing how, you consider this your hometown because of the sense of welcome that you and your family received when you moved here, and then kind of being able to participate in activities and events throughout the city, seeing the evolution of the city and realizing, particularly in the current climate, how important it is to craft and have such a welcoming atmosphere for people so our friends and neighbors feel safe where they live.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's really at the heart of it. I think that the city continues, we as individuals evolve, the city is evolving, and I think we always need to be aware of that and always willing to attend to that.
So when you think kind of about your hopes in the position going forward, connections to make, what are your thoughts on that?
I think there's a lot of work to be done, but I think that a lot of it has already been in place. And so what I really hope, again, is kind of going back to making sure that I'm in a position where I'm responding to some of the resident needs and responding to the community itself, making sure that we are reflective of the community that we are serving.
So as you touched on briefly earlier, and I want to talk a little bit more about, we have the NDEAM event, which is coming up. Tell me a little bit about your hopes for that. It's a nice way to raise awareness in the community and foster some new relationships.
I mean, this is the commissioner's event, and so I'm very excited for them. I know that they're excited to be able to make those connections. My hope for this is as a space for people to hear more about what the commission is doing, to have a space to network with other individuals who care about these issues. We're going to have artists who themselves have disabilities to really have a space to showcase all of the work that they are doing. So the biggest takeaway really is an opportunity for people to go there to look at the work that the commission itself is doing and to walk away with some tangible things that they themselves can do to further the needs in the community.
Excellent. As you said, planning is in the very initial stages for the Martin Luther King event, which happens every year. Again, it's a great body of work from the Human Rights Commission. It's a nice opportunity for the public to be able to come out, see a lovely event. It's varied over the years with music performances, dance, keynote speakers. It's always very interesting each year to kind of see the energy of the commission and kind of the direction they're looking to go in. So I know we'll have further information on that as we get nearer to the date, but it is definitely something we want to make certain community members are aware that it's going to be coming down the road.
No, absolutely, and it's always a really wonderful event. And I think at the end of the day, the biggest portion of that is the sense of community service, and that's the biggest takeaway from that event. We may have speakers, we may have musicians, we have different artists. They may vary year to year, but at the end of the day, this is a day for us to really recognize someone who did so much for the community and look within ourselves to figure out different ways that we can also serve that.
I think that's important to mention as well, as we had talked about and had a previous guest on before speaking about the Somerville volunteer program. So it's a way for community members who are looking to get involved with the city on an ongoing basis, on a one-time basis, to just have a connection, have a mechanism to feel more connected to the community. So I think any of those sort of relationships we can help to foster are really important.
Oh, absolutely.
Part of your work, as we mentioned, is AGA Compliance. So can you talk a little bit about the process if someone were to need to contact you to raise concern about an issue?
No, absolutely. The process is very simple. Just let me know that there's an issue that's going on in the city for you. Maybe it's an accessibility issue. Myself will go out to the site itself and investigate it, and I'll make sure that the relevant department gets word of the work that needs to be done, and I'll always maintain contact with them. But the process is very simple to get it started, and that's simply just to contact me.
So there are lots of different ways and reasons for community members to get in touch with you. So if someone is looking to volunteer with the commission, become a commissioner, find out more about ADA accessibility, why don't you talk a little bit about the space you're sited in?
I'm at the Cross Street Center, which I know previously had been the senior center, but I know that you've worked really hard to make sure that this is a space that's welcoming for everybody. And so it's the Cross Street Center is the fire station. It used to be the fire station on Broadway, and that's kind of how I've been referencing it to everyone, the old fire station. Knows it, yes. Yeah, and so, referencing probably 20 or 30 years ago, I'm not sure how long that space has been not a fire station. Actually, I didn't tell you this. My brother actually helped set up the space for the Cross Street Center many years ago. So he was there painting, doing all. So it's a random anecdote, but
nice closing of that circle. Yes.
So that's the space that we're in, and now it is much more than the senior center. It does still have that component, but it's also a community center where we're having different types of meetings. The Human Rights Commission meeting is there, as well as the Commission for Persons with Disabilities. But we've got many different types of forums that are also happening in that space.
Okay, we underwent some renovations in order to make the building accessible, so we encourage everyone to come by and see. We have the ramp in front now, allowing access to all. One of our strong partners with that is the Somerville Homeless Coalition's Project Soup Food Pantry is now located down Cross Street at the rear of the building. And as we're seeing more and more as they continue to grow their clientele, we're able to connect them with other services as well. So it's nice to kind of see the building packaged a little bit differently in order to really increase the use by community.
Absolutely, and I'm actually really impressed with the work that they do and the way that they actually do that. So it's really wonderful to also be, in a way, partnered with them.
Mm-hmm. It is. It's a really nice setup there. And then we also have Chucky Harris Park right there as well. So it's nice to just connect with people in different ways and make them aware of resources. You know, oftentimes walking by, you'll see someone in the park and you're able to, you know, just do the did you know part of it. Did you know that your office is sited there? Did you know that there are food resources available? So anything, again, that we do to really continue to raise awareness in the community is so important, particularly in the sort of work that we do.
Absolutely, and that's actually something that I've been struck by, the amount of programs that the city actually has. There is, you know, where we do have Project Soup, but there's also, you know, as I'm going through all the different departments, realizing, you know, that people are really thinking about the needs of the residents. You know, there is over at the what used to be the Cummings School, there's the clothes that are available to children and adults. So there's so many different programs and services, and I think at every turn, there is, there's this park and where we're holding this event, and so that's been very nice.
I think we hear that a lot of times as feedback from our residents as well, is we continue to grow the reputation as being a city that really cares about its residents in all the different aspects that that entails. Like you said, having the clothing closet, it can make a difference to someone if they're going on a job interview and need the appropriate clothes, or as we know in the past, people who had been victims of a fire, you know, have these other opportunities. And again, it just continues to strengthen the partnerships that exist.
No, absolutely.
So now, as a Somerville resident yourself, I'm sure you enjoy spending time around the city. Tell us about a few of the things you enjoy doing in the city.
I do. You know, I really love the amount of park space that we have and open space. I love, you know, now I've recently moved closer to the Highland Ave area, so I'm able to access the bike path again, and just being able to do those types of things within the community. There's so many different restaurants. I mean, there's so much to do. There's also Brooklyn Boulders. There's the Artist Asylum. If there's an interest you have, I think the city's definitely there. So I'm always also, you know, up for checking out new things and new types of stuff. So, which there is always something new opening up. So, but yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a very vibrant place to be.
So if you've got recommendations, I'm willing to take them.
So as we come to the end, I just wanted to speak a little bit about vacancies on the commission. So if people are looking to get engaged, what would that process be?
Honestly, just contact me. I'm happy to sit down with you. I'm happy to talk to you in more in depth about the different commissions. And once we have that meeting, you know, you're invited to our actual to the actual monthly meetings that we have. The Human Rights Commission meets every second Thursday of the month from 6:30 to 8, and the Persons for Disabilities Commission meets every second Tuesday of the month from 6 to 7:30. And those meetings are open to the public, so we encourage anyone to come and to participate in our meeting, even not as a commissioner, but your voice is important nevertheless. And so we encourage individuals to come to those meetings, to sit in on a few of those meetings, let us know what their thoughts are, and to see if that is the appropriate placement for them. And once we've made that determination, there's an application process.
Excellent. We always encourage people to go onto the city's website to gather more information about boards and commissions, the Summer Serve Volunteer Program, and then also to like the newly established Facebook pages for the Human Rights Commission as well as the Commission for Persons with Disability. It's a good way to get updates. As I said, as we get closer to events and activities, that will be a source of promotion for all of those things. So hopefully we'll be able to connect on an even deeper level with community members.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
As always, I'd like to thank the production crew, Joe Constantine, Steve DiCarlo, and George Wood. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next month.